Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're doing something a little different. We're skipping the usual agenda because we need to jump straight into a story that is incredibly moody, atmospheric, and honestly, deeply supernatural. We're looking at a fascinating narrative centered around a woman named Laura Wilson. Now, about 4 months ago, Laura's grandmother, Lana, passed away unexpectedly. And you know how grief is, right? It's been incredibly heavy. Not just for Laura, but for her grandpa Bill, who has just been completely unmoored by the whole thing. But for Laura, well, her grief is taking on a very strange, very active form in the middle of the night. Okay, let's dive right into this. Basically, every single night, Laura is haunted by these incredibly vivid, just utterly unsettling dreams of her grandmother. In the dreams, Lana is sitting right on the edge of Laura's bed. She's weeping, clearly overwhelmed by some unspoken inner turmoil, crying out, "My Lord, why do my past mistakes have to come up and flaunt themselves in front of me?" Laura keeps waking up from this just totally exhausted and deeply disturbed. But more than that, she feels this undeniable push from the afterlife. It's like her grandmother is reaching out from beyond the veil, basically begging for help to resolve something she just didn't have time to fix while she was alive. Which brings us to part one, the basement seance. To find some kind of closure, Laura decides to take a highly unconventional step. She agrees to host a seance. Now, the setting for this? Absolutely perfect. Laura lives in this vintage 1900s house on Marion Street, and beneath it sits this massive, dimly lit basement. She invites a group of friends over under the guise of a movie night, but the real focal point is her friend Zelda. Zelda is an amateur psychic medium, and she's brought all the tools necessary to pierce the veil between the living and the dead. The setup for the ritual is actually incredibly methodical. Zelda gathers the 8 of them around a large table right in the center of the basement. First, she places the spirit bait right in the middle. Next, she lights 2 candles. Then, she has someone kill the basement lights. This instantly plunges the whole room into these cool, chilling shadows, broken only by that warm, flickering candlelight. Finally, she tells everyone to join hands, making it absolutely crystal clear that under no circumstances should they break the physical circle. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the whole concept of spirit bait. You might think a seance requires, ancient relics or something, but Zelda's basket is filled with earthly pleasures. We're talking candy, tobacco products, miniature liquor bottles, and cold, hard cash. Zelda explains that spirits from all over are actually drawn to these physical delights. They literally miss the tactile experiences of the living world. So this basket basically acts as a lure to draw their attention right across the dimensional divide. It's actually a super fascinating look at the mechanics of the occult. But here in section 2, Attack of Rogue Spirits, is where things go terribly, terribly wrong. Zelda calls out to Grandma Lana, and suddenly, the room temperature just plummets. A freezing chill sweeps through the basement. One of Laura's friends, Dee Dee, goes entirely rigid. Her whole body jerks. She sits bolt upright, and she begins shaking violently. It looks terrifying, kind of like a seizure. But Zelda and another experienced guest named Nathan immediately recognize it for what it actually is, a full-blown spiritual possession. And spoiler alert, it is definitely not Grandma Lana who just showed up. The visceral horror of what happens next is honestly hard to overstate. A glowing, thick, paste-like substance starts oozing directly out of Dee Dee's eyes. It looks like a deformed snake just trailing down onto the table. This is ectoplasm, a physical manifestation of a powerful spiritual presence. Turns out, a rogue spirit, basically a low soul that feeds on human fear, has hijacked the seance. To make matters worse, as the whole group is totally panicking, a second rogue spirit named Sammy latches onto Zelda, and soon she is also exuding this glowing ectoplasm from her eyes, nose, and mouth. Just absolute nightmare fuel. Let's look at the timeline here and see how this builds, because over the next few minutes, the seance descends into absolute chaos. Minute 1, the chill hits. Minute 2, Dee Dee is possessed. Minute 4, the glowing ectoplasm starts flowing. Minute 6, Zelda gets possessed too. But thankfully, Nathan Lane, the guest with deep occult experience, steps up and takes charge. He realizes these rogue spirits are really just spiritual bullies trying to harvest the group's terror. He commands everyone to hold the circle, do not let go of each other's hands, and chant a unified mantra to drive the entities away. By minute 8, the sheer force of the group's concentrated will forces the ectoplasm to literally evaporate into thin air, and the rogue spirits are banished right back to the void. Okay, moving into part 3, a 1960s secret revealed. After all that chaos, the basement goes entirely silent. The fear slowly begins to dissipate. And then, From the stillness, a faint, incredibly old voice speaks through Dee Dee's exhausted body. It's Grandma Lana. The rogue spirits are finally gone, and the true spirit of Laura's grandmother has stepped forward to confess the dark burden that's been keeping her from resting in peace. Lana reveals this tragic, completely hidden life from the 1960s. Back in 1967, when she was just 18 and long before she ever met Grandpa Bill, she impulsively married a man named Harry Goheen. Well, Harry quickly turned abusive and alcoholic. In the summer of 1968, she unexpectedly gave birth to twin boys, Tim and Joe. But shortly after bringing them home, that fall, Harry was killed instantly in a drunk driving crash. Left entirely alone, totally penniless, and in a state of deep emotional shock at just 19 years old, Lana made the desperate, agonizing decision to put her newborn twins up for adoption. The weight of this revelation is just immense. I mean, Lana had kept this entire previous life in absolute secret from Grandpa Bill. Out of deep shame and this profound fear that he would leave her if he knew, she buried her past. But that lie festered. Her spirit tells Laura that her soul literally cannot find rest until Grandpa Bill knows the truth, and until her long-lost sons are found and told her story. Think about that for a second. It is a massive, crushing responsibility suddenly placed squarely on Laura's shoulders. But the story doesn't end in the basement, which brings us to our final section, erasing the past. The next morning, Zelda comes to Laura with a shocking twist. In her prop box, she had an old tape recorder she normally uses to pick up audio frequencies. Well, without realizing it, when she set the box down, she accidentally bumped the record button. The entire seance, every horrifying moment with the rogue spirits, and, way more importantly, Grandma Lana's complete word-for-word confession has been captured on tape. So, the crucial point is this agonizing moral dilemma Laura now faces. On one hand, she can reveal the truth, right? She could play the tape for Grandpa Bill, fulfilling a ghost's dying wish, but likely shattering an old man's heart and completely disrupting the lives of two 50-year-old twins who have absolutely no idea she exists. On the other hand, she can erase the tape. That protects the living and keeps her family's peace, but it means forcing herself to carry the heavy burden of this secret entirely alone for the rest of her life. That night, Laura has one final dream of Grandma Lana. But this time, it's not a nightmare at all. They're sitting together in a bright, sunlit kitchen. Lana gently explains to Laura that the restless dreams weren't really about Lana's pain. They were actually about Laura's need for closure. Lana tells her the truth in this instance is really just pain. She explains that in the world of the living, the truth about her past would now only cause unnecessary sorrow to Grandpa Bill and her sons. She leaves the ultimate choice to Laura, reminding her that a small part inside of us exists solely to protect those we love. The next morning, the sun rises, and Laura wakes up with her mind finally clear. She takes the tape recorder out of the box. She watches the mechanical counter rewind all the way back to 0. She pauses for just a fraction of a second. And then, with a heavy but resolute mechanical click, Laura presses the play and record buttons simultaneously. The tape begins to spin, quietly and permanently erasing the ghosts of the past forever. It's such a profound, haunting ending to an incredible story of family, grief, and the things we leave behind. And it leaves us with this final question. If you were in Laura's shoes, holding the absolute only definitive proof of a ghost's darkest, most painful secret, would you reveal it to the world, or would you hit erase to protect the living? It is definitely a heavy burden to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope you found this breakdown as captivating as I did. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next one.